Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast on 13 WMAZ Plus. Have a bit of an active afternoon that is going to be in store and already seeing that weather approach from the north and the northwest. So we'll check in on our current conditions and what the models are saying about what's going to play out later this afternoon. It's going to kind of be a cluster because the models are disagreeing very drastically, but we'll go over what potential impacts that we are going to see and that best time frame that we can be thinking you'll run into some rain, maybe even some storms this afternoon. So let's kick it off. What did we do yesterday in the way of rain? We continue to start it out with this each and every stream that we have. Most areas did only top out at maybe a couple tenths of an inch of rain, exactly a tenth of an inch of rain in Dublin, over in Lawrence County, close to an inch in Forsyth, and then some isolated pockets that were closer to about 2 inches, maybe about 1.5 inches up here in Jackson, closer to 2 inches just south and east of Thomaston, 1.3 down in southern Dodge County just to the east of Abbeville, and then down here in Chris County. These areas did actually top out with the most rain totals that we did see yesterday because there were some severe thunderstorms that popped up over the Lake Blackshear area. So close to 3 inches in some isolated spots just off of I-75 in Chris County, 2.5 inches a little bit farther over to the west. So we didn't see much in the way of rain across many of our most populated areas yesterday. Macon not seeing any rain. Warner Robins not seeing any rain. Milledgeville not seeing anything in the way of rain. And that exists for other areas in Peach County, Twiggs County, Wilkinson, up into Washington County, some portions of Hancock County. But the rain once again was very scattered in nature, just like it has been as of recent days. It does look to be more widespread later this afternoon. So getting into your headlines, the front will be moving through today, and that's going to be driving a more organized chance of rain today. A few gusty storms going to be possible. Some of them can be strong, and maybe 1 or 2 of them will tag as a severe thunderstorm warning. And then the temperatures, they are only getting higher as we roll into next week. So yes, the big time heat is here to stay, but there is a little bit of relief in terms of some rain chances and maybe a little bit less moisture in the atmosphere. So we'll go over that as well. So here's a look across all 4 of our sky cams. It has been a beautiful image all morning long across central Georgia. Georgia National Fairgrounds getting a little bit of shade from some cloud cover. Nice and sunny across Macon down to downtown Dublin and in Warner Robins off Cohen Walker Drive and Sutherland Drive right there. So plenty of sunshine, the occasional little shaded area that you can find, and take those while you can because obviously the temperatures are just continuing to increase here at this hour. Somewhere in the low 80s right now, a couple areas still holding on to the upper 70s like Eastman over to Thomaston, Forsyth, and Monticello. And taking a look at your current temperatures across the country, we've been talking about those areas where we can see some shades of green, maybe some rain-cooled air. We'll take a look at where that rain-cooled air is currently present. This patch of green right here, kind of in central Tennessee, stretching down into northern Alabama, northern Mississippi, and maybe some portions of north and northwest Georgia. There's lots of rain to be found there, and you'll get a good image of it on the satellite and radar picture in just 1 second. But we'll talk about some of the warmer areas. We're in the lower 80s right now in central Georgia. Down as you go into southern Georgia, somewhere in Florida, you're welcoming in some mid-80s, 87 already in New Orleans, and I believe that is our warmest temperature. Actually, no, matching the temperature over in Virginia Beach at this hour. These areas up here to the north and the northeast are going to have their fair share of some storms once again this afternoon. And yes, they have more of a risk of seeing some strong weather as opposed to us down here in the south and the southeast. So let's go to your dew points. Your dew point temperatures, starting to see patches of that very dark green build in. Some areas maybe even have dew points in the upper 60s this morning. So it was a little bit of a pleasant sight to see. Going to be very short-lived, however, as we see all of these numbers quickly rebounding into the upper 70s. Hopefully we can at least keep some of those 80-degree marks out of here on this map today. So your feels like numbers going to be warmer in that area where we did see the darkest green present. Feels like 96 already in Gordon, 90 in Warner Robins, 93 in Unadilla, 90 in Montezuma, 92 in Butler. But Thomaston over here actually feeling pretty true to its actual temperature. That's because those temperatures are still a little bit cooler, somewhere around 77 degrees. So once you get into the upper end of the 70s, near 80 degrees, that's where the humidity starts to have more of a role on what it does feel like outside. But also areas up to the north and the northwest are trending kind of in that same color shade as Upson County right now. That's going to be a theme throughout today. Your areas up to the north and the northwest here in central Georgia are not going to have these heat indices really continue to rise much longer because they're going to be the first to see anything in the way of rain today. Here's a look at your winds and your wind gusts still coming out of the south and the southwest. We are going to see a shift in those winds, more westerly and more northwesterly as we get the passage of the frontal boundary. But a steady breeze, 5 to 10 miles per hour right now, and we can see some wind gusts later on today in those isolated spots where it is very stormy and pretty intense in nature. Those wind gusts can get up to maybe 20 plus miles per hour, especially with the stronger or severe storm, where your winds would be maybe in about the 40 to 60 mile per hour range. Here's a look at your satellite and radar picture. Mostly clear, some patchy cumulus clouds all across that the satellite and radar picture is not really picking up, but plenty of cloud cover moving in from the west and the northwest. And this is all associated with this line right here. So you can see it's already moved into the northwestern corner of the state of Georgia. Maybe a storm or two, but it moved in during those early morning hours. So temperatures kind of at their coolest, not necessarily the most sufficient environment in terms of sprouting severe weather because you need the heat, the humidity. So that afternoon time frame allows for more intensification with some active weather. And you can see that this stretches back all the way into the northern half of Alabama. This line about to make its way into Birmingham and central Alabama. But we're trying to figure out which part of this line is going to specifically impact our forecast. When you look, we're not too far away from the leading edge of this, maybe about 100 or so miles. But if I take it back over here and I drag this over to where the Birmingham radar is picking it up, you can see that obviously this line exists well over to the west, areas of northern Mississippi, which does kind of correlate to those areas that we were seeing the rain-cooled air, those shades of green on the big picture map of the eastern half of the United States. Take a look at this Boeing shape, though, however, associated with this line. We'll pause it right here in real time. That Boeing shape, you can kind of see it just stretching out all the way back here, kind of a little bit of an ellipse, if you will. That's going to indicate some very gusty winds associated with this. None of them are popping up any severe thunderstorm warnings as of right now, which is a good thing. But as the temperatures ahead of it only continue to get warmer, and there's plenty of moisture available in these Gulf Coast states, I do expect a couple of warnings back here in Alabama pretty shortly. But it's not picking up on much over here in northwest Georgia right now. And we're kind of seeing a general southeasterly direction with this line. Obviously, this segment right here is continuing to bow out. This is a continuous line of pretty heavy rain and some gusty winds, some occasional flashes of lightning, some of which are trying to cluster together maybe over here right north of the 359 sign. But it does look like this doesn't pick up on much over here that could be coming down towards the south and the southeast. However, the radar, once you get farther and farther away from it, the resolution does get a little bit iffy. That's why we're not picking up on most of this segment back in Alabama from our Peachtree City radar right here. So it's all going to depend on what this kind of segment right here in northeast Alabama, northwest Georgia, is that going to continue to push down towards the south and the southeast, or are we more so going to get part of this cluster where the rain is a little bit steadier and heavier in nature? Only time is really going to tell with this because the models have not been doing a good job at giving us an accurate time prediction. However, our guidance that we have received this morning and that I'm continuing to believe too, kind of taking a middle ground of things, I-85 right here. So I-85 going to go across the South Carolina state line right there. It's this faint red line, and then once you go over here, 85 is going to go down over towards Auburn and eventually Montgomery. So this is kind of where the line is. Actually, it would probably be more helpful if I specifically drew it on this graphic. Let's take this. That's a rough estimate about where I-85 is. So this white line right here, areas to the north of it, expected to see the impacts of the system before 1 p.m., but then 1 p.m. and after, sometime into the evening hours, is when the rest of the FFC or the Peachtree City viewing area is going to start to see the impacts of this system. So it does look like we still have a little bit of leeway right now. Past 1 p.m. is where these showers and storms are going to start to creep closer to central Georgia. And again, we try to pick out when those storms are just a couple counties away, because if there is a strong or an intense storm in nature, some of those severe thunderstorm warnings, we know they get extended ahead of where the heaviest impacts are. So we could see some of those, if they are to pop up a severe thunderstorm warning in our northwestern counties, maybe as early as around 1 to 2 in the afternoon, which is a little bit earlier than what FutureView has to say about it. I'm really not buying necessarily what FutureView has to say, but we'll go over that in just 1 second. The first part of today, the temperatures are going to be the big story. Steadily climbing into the upper 80s and then kind of topping out at that 89-degree mark, maybe 88 degrees. I believe we'll cool down a little bit earlier than this because this is going according to our future view model. And then we take a look at the heat index values, just like yesterday, mid to upper 90s. I believe some areas are going to overshoot those numbers, maybe as high as the upper 90s, flirting with the triple digits, especially the farther south and southeast that you live, because you guys are going to be the last to receive anything in the way of rain. So you could have a whole afternoon with just straight sunshine that is going to continue to warm those temperatures up, and not much in the way of pop-up activity like we've had as of recent days around maybe 3 or 4 o'clock to prevent that last hour, 2 or 3 of heating. So those temperatures should climb as high as they can get, and along with that, the humidity will get as high as it can get. 67 was our morning low yesterday on the almanac, so went below average for a change, maybe a little bit more of a pleasant feel in the air. 91 for the third straight day in a row, so we have hit average 3 days in a row here in central Georgia, right on par. And thankfully, once again, we're not dealing with records in the triple digits. 101 back in 1944 for yesterday, 57 the record low in 1899. Wow, that was quite some time ago. We were 10 degrees over that 57-degree mark, so 67 feeling a lot better than 57. 57 would definitely feel more like a chill in the air for the month of June. Didn't record any rain at Middle Georgia Regional Airport yesterday, so we are hovering about 3.5 inches above where we should be this time of year. But I'm pretty sure we're going to record some more rain today at Middle Georgia Regional Airport that will continue to allow that number to rise back closer to about 4 inches above where we should be. So 6:27 was the sunrise yesterday. Sunset was at 8:45. Didn't see any change in those times throughout from the day before into yesterday. So it's still looking like we're hitting that maximum amount of daylight that we do have, as the first day of summer will be tomorrow, and I believe the longest day of the year in terms of daylight hours will be on Saturday. So hot and humid to start today, and then storms will start to roll in this afternoon. The warmer we get and the more humid that we get, it's going to create a perfect breeding ground for maybe some intense storms, maybe some stronger storms. However, you need a lot of factors to come together. We were talking about this yesterday with that SLIM acronym. You need shear, you need lift, you need instability, and you need moisture. Well, the warmer our temperatures get, obviously that's going to create more instability, that surface heating, and then moisture, we definitely have that present. We have lift ahead of this frontal boundary, but if these kind of showers and storms push a little bit too far ahead of the frontal boundary, they're not going to be close to that axis of lift directly ahead of the actual boundary. So that's a little bit fuzzy right now. And our shear, not looking terribly impressive this afternoon. That's why there's still some question marks, and that's why the risk hasn't been upgraded necessarily. We're really just looking at the potential for maybe seeing a couple of storms that are a little more intense in nature, maybe a severe thunderstorm warning, or we could even see a handful later this afternoon. So 92 for a high temperature. That would go 1 degree above what we forecasted as of yesterday, or what we hit yesterday. I believe I did forecast 92, didn't quite make it there. But let's jump into future view. Let's go over this timing. First thing you notice, this is 2 hours in the future. We should be getting a good view of what's currently up to the northwest, where future view is trying to hint at a couple of stray showers, maybe a rumble of thunder or two in the northwestern vicinity of the state of Georgia. It's not picking up on any of that activity that's moving into Birmingham currently at this hour, and this is about 2.5 hours into the future. So that's why, number one, I'm very reluctant to believe what future view has to say, because it's not even initializing what's currently happening. Then we go into about 4 p.m., still not seeing anything in the way of rain, and at that, nothing is really organized whatsoever as it tries to push through. We go to 5 p.m., still without rain here in central Georgia. It's finally once we get to about the 7 p.m. hour later on this evening that we do see a little bit of a Boeing segment, maybe kind of a little bit of quasi-organization with this, so partially organized. It's still fairly broken, a cluster of maybe some showers and some thunderstorms. Still very broken. This looks like what future views look like as of recent days, and this is getting to around sunset time when our temperatures are beginning to cool down, and then it has everything intensifying as we go into the nighttime hours. So I've been very reluctant to believe whatever future view has said all morning long. Well, besides when I first came in, and it did actually show a line that had pretty good organization around the same timing we were talking about yesterday, maybe moving in around 2 or 3 p.m. and then getting out of here by the time we roll into about 8-9 o'clock later on in the evening, but is not going along with that thought process whatsoever anymore. So kind of take this with a grain of salt, at least for today. I do believe its forecast for your Friday and Saturday is going to be mighty nice, and it's going to be a bit of a treat for you. This is 2 p.m. on Friday. Mostly clear. You see some scattered green dots all across the state of Georgia. So you may have the chance of seeing an isolated and a very short-lived shower, but it's going to be fairly light in nature, not talking anything in the way of thunderstorm chances tomorrow, because this front will push through and it will bring in some slightly drier air as we go into Friday. But not only Friday, the second day of your weekend too is shaping up nice and beautiful. 8 a.m. on Saturday, mostly clear skies. We could see a couple of scattered showers popping up on the radar, but nothing that's really abnormal for this time of year. But the humidity is still going to be below what it has been as of recently. So that's going to create more scattered rain chances, better likelihood than not that you will remain dry. And if you do run into a shower, it's just going to help cool those temperatures down a little bit. And I'm sure none of you are going to mind that when I show you what the high temperatures are this weekend. Now we go to 3 a.m. on Sunday, which is as far as future view does go. But let's take it to another model, the high resolution model. Now I do believe we may trend a little bit ahead of this model, but it's maintaining a better idea of what is probably going to be the picture on your satellite and radar. 4 p.m. starting to see some of the heaviest rain, some of those storms move into our northwesternmost counties. I think maybe we see this probably around the 2 to 3 p.m. hours, but nonetheless, it creeps in, continues to move in, maintains pretty good organization. This isn't going to be a continuous line by any means. However, it is going to have pretty widespread impacts. This continues into 5 and 6 p.m., some pockets of some dark red, some pockets of even some pink, according to this high resolution model, the HRRR right here. And you can see widespread impacts and this pockets where you do see some of the darker colors or lighter if you do see any of the pink. It's going to indicate very heavy rainfall rates. And along with that does come the potential for hail. Along with that does come the potential for frequent lightning. And it does allow for the potential for maybe a stronger or even a severe thunderstorm warning. So that's going to be possible as this line continues to push through into the evening hours. This is 8 p.m. as we're getting into about sunset time, and all these areas down in our south and our southeast are still going to have very warm air. They're going to have that muggy air, so it's still going to have a little bit to work with as it moves all the way through central Georgia. And then finally it starts to fall apart, but it's already exited us towards the south and the southeast as we go into the nighttime hours tonight. So taking a look at your day one storm outlook, we got a little bit of an update with this as of this morning around 8 a.m. Basically, everyone in central Georgia has been in this level 1 since this was the day 3 outlook. Except for our southern row of counties, well, now they have been added to the day 1 outlook, which is a level 1 risk, a relatively low level 1 risk, excuse me. But potential threats are really just going to be the gusty and damaging winds. That's the only thing that we're really seeing highlighted. This is a fairly quick moving system, so we won't be dealing with much in the way of hail, but I wouldn't rule it out of the realm of possibility. And the tornado threat is looking next to none. So it's really just looking like a couple of storms could be quite strong with some gusty winds, some damaging winds. Not to take away from the fact that gusty and damaging winds can do their fair share of damage, hint the word damaging right there. So that is what's going to be in store, maybe 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts if we do see a storm pop up, a severe thunderstorm warning. But now a little bit to the good news, and then we'll talk a little bit of tropics and then kind of circle back to that radar and kind of get a good image and try to give you a more accurate prediction about when that line is going to head in. But of course, I'll be trying to update you at midday, and I'll be putting it out on socials about when that line is really creeping close to us. So the humidity, I did mention some slightly drier air going to usher in. We see that downtick from today into Friday, and again, we do see this muggy meter undershooting what the humidity values are each and every day. So somewhere in the humid range for Friday, but that still is a downtick. If we can get some areas of at least some light green, that's going to be a little bit of relief. And then Saturday, maybe we see dew point temperatures get into the 50s. That may more so just be the morning hours. I think we'll see a little bit of a rebound in the afternoon, because as we go into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, the humidity is back, but not in full force like it has been somewhere in the 70s in this dark green color as of recently. And then we see another downtick Tuesday into Wednesday. I'm not really picking up on any big weather systems as we go into the midweek next week. So We'll see how that continues to resolve itself on the muggy meter, but there is going to be a downtick over Friday and Saturday. That's why if you see anything in the way of rain, it's really just looking like it's going to be scattered showers. But as the humidity rebounds a little bit, we could be dealing with maybe the possibility of a storm or two. The other factor is that humidity does make it feel a lot warmer outside. We've seen that over the last couple of days. Feels like numbers already above the triple digits in some isolated areas. Well, with that downtick in humidity, you may be saying, oh, yay, it's not going to feel as warm. Au contraire, because unfortunately, with less rain chances in the forecast, trying to cool us down right before we hit that maximum heating in the afternoon, we are going to see these temperatures steadily climb up. How about a degree each and every day? 93, 94 to 95 on Sunday, 96 on Monday. And unfortunately, they do not stop there when I show you the 7-day forecast in just a little. The good news is those numbers will feel pretty accurate of what they actually are. You can see upper 90s later on this afternoon before that rain moves through. Again, this is having the rain move in a little bit later in time, but we can see some patches of pink just like we saw yesterday. Go into the overnight hours, of course, cooling. Going into your Friday afternoon, feeling like 92, 94 in Macon and Dublin. It's pretty accurate of what the forecasted highs I have because I forecasted 93 for a high temperature on Friday afternoon. Now going into Saturday, forecasted high around 94 degrees. Well, look at that, 93 in Macon, 95 in Dublin. The humidity will not be playing as much of a role on the feels like numbers over Friday and Saturday. But don't get me wrong, just because I'm telling you that doesn't mean that it's going to be nice and cool. It is still going to be a hot day, maybe not just noticing that air that you can wear as much. So let's go into the long range models. How does Sunday look? Sunday still maybe some scattered rain chances. I wouldn't rule out the potential for maybe a storm in the cards. We'll get a better view once Sunday pops up on the short range models tomorrow. However, it does look like the coverage of rain is very, very scattered still. Going into Monday, could be a completely dry day. It just all depends on what's going to happen really if we continue to get that flow from the south and the southwest. But it is looking like we are trending a lot drier from Monday on into Tuesday. And then we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, and the GFS in green is still trying to hint at a couple of shades of that green moving into central Georgia. We'll see how that comes into play. But right now, it's not looking like anything impressive in the way of organized rain as we go into next week. And it's not looking like widespread rain all around us or in our near vicinity or right over us like the long range models were showing for this past week over the course of last week whenever they were in view of the long range models. So here's a look at your 7-day forecast. First day of summer kicking off tomorrow. I think it's going to be a great weekend to celebrate accordingly. Go hit the pool, go to the water park, do all those fun summertime activities that you would normally do, and you're not going to really have to make plans to accommodate an afternoon storm in nature. I've bumped it down just to general rain chances for Friday and Saturday. That's what the models are showing, not only future view, but also all of the other models I've looked at. That includes that high res model I just showed you, the NAM model, all the models that I typically look at to kind of cover the bases and get an accurate prediction. 60% chance of showers and storms today. We may see a little bit more in that in terms of coverage. However, with the model disagreement, I've kind of gone with that 60%, which does mean more areas than not are going to see at least something in the form of rain. You may only see a light shower or a steady shower. You may only hear just a couple rumbles of thunder off in the distance, or you may get one of those possible severe thunderstorm warnings. It's all going to just depend on which area has the most conducive atmosphere whenever this line does push through. Now we go to Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week. And you'll see I've kept the 20% chance of seeing a shower or even a storm in nature, and that classifies as non-severe storms. Not confident in severe weather whatsoever Sunday through Wednesday, but it's summertime with temperatures in the mid-90s that are probably going to feel a little bit warmer by the time we get to this time period, as the humidity will be rebounding back into the forecast. You can't rule out seeing an isolated pop-up storm or two, so this is more reminiscent of our summertime forecast, and that is working very accordingly because obviously finally rolling into the summer season. But you did see the long-range models not looking too impressive. That's just really to cover the bases, and once we get a better idea on short-range future view, we can kind of nail down those rain chances. We may even bump them down to about 10%. We may bump them down just to general showers depending on the setup that we have that far in advance. But note those high temperatures. They continue to climb. I said 96 wasn't even the highest temperature over the next 7 days. And yes, how about 97 right now for Tuesday and Wednesday? Some models have even been calling for 100 for a high by the time we get to Wednesday next week. So no shortage of heat whatsoever. That slightly drier air isn't really going to make a difference for how it does feel outside. But it will be a little bit of a drier heat, about as dry of a heat as we can get down here in the southeast. But it's going to be hot and maybe a little bit humid as we head more so into the beginning of next week. So a pretty typical summertime forecast right there. So let's check in real quick on the tropics. No activity still here in the Atlantic. This is as of the 8 a.m. advisory this morning from the National Hurricane Center. So I decided to put a box on here that will pop up whenever the tropics are quiet, and the Atlantic has been very, very quiet to start out hurricane season. Not the case in the Pacific. Here's Hurricane Eric right now, which did make landfall shortly ago in southern Mexico. Hurricane Eric was once a Category 4 hurricane earlier this morning before it did make landfall. I believe it's the first major hurricane to make landfall in Mexico in the month of June. So pretty historic storm right there. Number one, just due to its intensity this early in hurricane season. But also take a look at this. E. That is the 5th named storm in the Eastern Pacific so far. We have had zilch, zero, none whatsoever in the Atlantic Basin so far. You can see that Eric is drastically weakening now as it does move across shore. 85-mile-per-hour winds. Those winds were up to 145 miles per hour just before landfall. So these tropical systems, once again, once they interact with land, they definitely drastically weaken in nature because they're not over that warm water that does contribute to intensification with tropical systems. So Eric shouldn't have much more of a lifetime. As quickly as it did rapidly intensify, it's going to rapidly de-intensify as it moves over land. Maybe only a couple more advisories before Eric is just a remnant low pressure system, but it's still bringing its fair share of heavy rain into southern portions of Mexico. I believe the specific province of Oaxaca down here off the southern Mexican coast of the Pacific Ocean. And plenty more rain where that came from. And there is even another area of potential of development that may come from some of the remnants of Hurricane Eric. That has about a 20% chance of development over the next 2 days, I do believe, is what I saw on the National Hurricane Center website. So yes, Pacific is having these systems pop up like popcorn, kind of like our afternoon showers and storms. But the Atlantic is very quiet. No complaints whatsoever from us. And if any of these systems over in the Eastern Pacific are to decide to misbehave, maybe cross over Mexico, move into the Gulf and have a general direction towards central Georgia, then of course we will be keeping you updated on it, but nothing to worry about tropics wise. The more immediate concern is going to be this afternoon showers and storms. And right now we'll go back to our satellite and radar picture to get one last look at where that weather is currently located. Plenty of scattered showers right now in northwest Georgia, not too much lightning associated with anything that is currently moving up there. And really not much lightning whatsoever, even with this line as it crosses I-59 right here, moves towards Anniston. It's already through the Birmingham area. So I believe this is probably going to be the segment, if it does hold together, that pushes into central Georgia. But if it is to fall apart in nature, we could see a resolution a lot more like what FutureView had to say, the graph model. However, I do believe we're going to go a little bit more along the resolution of at least the HRRR model, the high-res model. You can see that I-85 boundary right there. That was that white line I drew. So I would say, yeah, this is probably at least about an hour and a half, 2 hours out from at least crossing I-85. And once it does cross I-85, central Georgia isn't too far away, at least our north and northwesternmost counties, getting into areas like Griffin, Zebulon, Thomaston, Forsyth, and Jackson. It's going to encompass that I-75 corridor right there. So it's not too far away. I would still plan on maybe about 2 p.m. Though for those areas, that's probably when we're going to start to see this line make its appearance known. But it could just be our fair share of some low-end thunderstorms, some heavy showers, but it is going to run into a pretty conducive environment for some re-intensification. So there's something we're going to have to keep a close eye on this afternoon. And definitely I advise you to definitely have a contingency plan. Try to beat this rain, leave work a little bit earlier. Check this radar, check our live radar that we have on the 13 WMAZ Plus app, so you're not running into these messy conditions for your evening commute home from work this Thursday. But then after we are in the clear later on tonight, we have a lot to look forward to this weekend. It's going to be hot. Make sure that you are continuing to hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. You will hear us say that all the time as we go throughout the next couple of months. Kicking off the official start of summer tomorrow. It's already felt like summer for quite some time, but now going to officially be this season of summer. So hopefully our weather goes along accordingly. And we're just really telling you about a 20% chance of a pop-up shower, maybe a storm each and every day, besides these more organized pop-up showers and storms that we've been talking about as of recently. So that will do it for your extended forecast. I'll see you back on 13 WMAZ at midday. David Guerrero will be in later this evening, keeping you updated as the system does move through. We're going to keep our fingers crossed that there's not too many severe thunderstorm warnings associated with this, or none whatsoever, but the potential definitely does exist there. So we'll be keeping our eyes on it all afternoon into the evening. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow at 10:30 as well.